Hi everyone. Hi. 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 Um, Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Erin, and today I kind of just wanted to jump on here and talk about how I got into medical school, everything that I did leading up, high school, undergrad, and the gap year that I had to take. But before we get into that, I would really love it if you would all like and subscribe. This is a new channel and I really hope to grow it, and I would love to have you all join in on that journey. So before I got started, I also just wanted to say a disclaimer that this is not the only way to get into medical school. To be honest, I don't think anyone's cracked the code on the perfect way to get into medical school. This is just what I did, and what worked for me, and hopefully you can find something in it that will help you and that will hopefully work for you as well. So let's get started. Okay, so starting back in high school, there's not really much to say about that, in the sense that what you do in high school doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters in high school is that you are scoring well enough to get into college. Nothing on your medical school application can be from high school, unless it's like you've been working at the same job from high school to your senior year of undergrad or something like that. So really just focus on getting a good ACT or SAT score and getting into your college of choice. You don't need to go to an Ivy League college. I went to a state school. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that. So getting into undergrad, I went to my state school. Well, it's not the only state school here. I went to a state school here in Louisiana. Going into school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to major in. I just knew I did want to work in healthcare. Both of my parents are occupational therapists. My sister is a nurse. So I kind of had the vibe that I was going to go into healthcare as well, but I wasn't too sure what. So just kind of weighing the pros and cons of everything and figuring out what I wanted to do and what was important to me in a job is kind of how I figured out that I wanted to go into medicine. So I kind of was drawn towards medicine for the fact that you have autonomy and you're able to go into research. There's many specialties you can choose. There's academic medicine that you can do, then you can work in public health. There's just so much you can do. It's just a really vast field to go into. And so once I knew that I wanted to practice medicine, I just kind of did some quick research on what the requirements to get into medical school, and I ended up choosing biology as my major. So that is not the only major that you can choose. You can major in literature, you can major in communications, you can major in theater, but as long as you take the proper prereqs for med school, you'll be fine. Biology to me was just probably like the easiest route to make sure you're getting all of your prereqs in for medical school. And so just making sure that I was looking on the websites for different medical schools to make sure that I was meeting the requirements for those schools. And so I ended up graduating last spring, which was May of 2019, with my degree in biology. I finished with a 3.7 cumulative and I think it was either a 3.6, I think it was a 3.6 science GPA. That's another thing, is you want to make sure you're looking at your science GPA as well as your cumulative GPA, because you might have a 4.0, but if they extract your science courses and you have a 2.4 as your science GPA, it might cause some issues for you later on. So you just want to make sure you're keeping track of that type of stuff. So I actually did apply to medical school in 2018 to start in 2019. Yeah, but I didn't get in, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I took the MCAT for the first time in June of 2018, and I absolutely bombed it. I scored in I think the 30th percentile. I made a 497, and then by the time I got the score back, I think it was the end of July, and I was starting to panic because you see everywhere online make sure you're submitting early, and I was like, well, I have to get this application in. So I went to talk to the pre-med advisor at my campus. So he encouraged me to retake it and to submit the primary application anyway, which I think the better option would have been to just withdraw the application at that point, or to never submit it in the first place, because I hadn't even submitted at that point. I think that would have been the better option. But I went ahead and I submitted it there in July, and then I took the MCAT again in September. And 1 month of studying, that August, that's not enough time to sufficiently raise your score, at least for me. And so I only went up 2 points that second time. And so by then I had already submitted the primary, secondaries were sent out, so I just went on with it, and I ultimately didn't get in. I also only applied to 4 schools. I was really lacking in shadowing hours. It just was not, I had not done what I needed to do to get into school. So ultimately, surprise, surprise, I ended up not getting accepted last year, 2019, right? So by then I was kind of freaking out because I was graduating in May, and I didn't have a backup plan because I had always thought that I was gonna go straight from undergrad to med school. So I was kind of, freaking out about that. So when I graduated, I did move back home with my parents, and I just kind of had to talk with myself, and I was like, if this is something you really want to do, you're gonna have to sit down and figure out what you can do to fix this application to get in the second time. So I actually ended up emailing the dean of admissions at a medical school here in my hometown, and asked if I could come in and meet with him, and he could go through my application, tell me what I could fix. I thought he wouldn't even reply, but he was actually very nice. And we set up a meeting. I went in, he told me point blank period, you need to raise this MCAT score, you need some more shadowing hours. And so I was like, well, that's what I'm gonna do. And so I left that day, and I scheduled a new MCAT, and I took it in July of last year. And some people might be like, that's really late, but for me, it was like, I think that's sufficient time. To me, in my opinion, if you have everything in primaries and secondaries by Labor Day, I think that you're in good shape. That's just my opinion. It worked for me. So then I started working at an urgent care here in my hometown, and COVID also started to pop off at the same time, so I did get a lot of experience doing that. I was actually allowed to swab people for COVID. I've given shots, I've drawn blood, taken vital signs, so that job was really good. It gave me experience, but I also learned a lot at the same time, so I wasn't just using it as an application padder or fluffer, an application booster.
When do it becomes?
So yeah, so I'm gonna go back a little bit because I jumped ahead. So on the application, you're able to list 15 extracurriculars and research and awards and all of that. And so I'll talk a little bit now about what I did in undergrad to put on my application. So I think extracurriculars was where I really shined. I was pretty heavily involved in undergrad. I did Soul Camp at my school, which is kind of like an extended orientation program for freshmen. I also was a biology tutor. I did mentoring. I planned a community service event that we have at our school called The Big Event. I was on the marketing committee for that. I was in a sorority. I was in the pre-professional society at my school, and I think that's it as far as like organizations. But I also did a lot of community service through all of those organizations. So I ended up getting community service awards at my graduation, philanthropy awards, and then also Black Student Achievement Awards, and that was for GPA. So I put on my application that I volunteered with an OT and a PT, and I know some of you guys might be like, well, why would you put that on your med school application? So I actually thought it looked good because it showed that I had considered other options in the healthcare field, but that I had still decided that medicine is what I wanted to do, because I know that's a question for a lot of them is how do you know that, like, why don't you want to be a nurse, or why not PA or something like that? And I think that helped to show that I had considered those other options and that I didn't think they were right for me. So that's why I ended up including them. And then I also did some work, like I worked at a restaurant, wasn't a restaurant, like a fast food restaurant in college, and then I also worked for the housing department of my university, so I put those on there as well. And then the urgent care job that I had. So I think I filled up 15 out of 15 slots. You don't need to fill all 15. What they're looking for more than anything is that you can commit to something. So you don't want to put something on there that you did for one weekend and then never touched again. So everything on mine I did for at least a year, except for my jobs. I did those for about 6 to 8 months. So yeah. So research. I'm not big on research personally. I'm not really interested in like the PhD aspect or like anything like that, but I knew that it was something that they kind of looked for, so I did try and get involved in it, and like at least a little bit. So I did my junior year of college, I did some research with the biology department at my school, and then I also did some research with the Louisiana Department of Agriculture for like a semester. So I think a lot of schools, unless it's a research heavy school, they're not absolutely requiring you to have done research in undergrad because it is limited and not everyone's going to be able to do it. And so yeah, during this gap year that I've had to take, I basically used like the first 3 months of it to study for the MCAT and retake the MCAT. And then after that, I essentially spent the last 8 months just working and doing interviews and stuff like that. And so I know a lot of people will do a master's program or a post-bac or something like that, but I didn't feel like I needed to do a post-bac. I thought my GPA was pretty good, and I just wasn't all that interested in getting a master's, so that's why I didn't go that route. But if that's something you're interested in, I would say go for it. And it wouldn't hurt, could only add to your application. For my letters of recommendation, I think the way it goes on the application is you can either do 3 individual letters from like 3 professors, or you can get a committee letter from the pre-professional committee at your school. So I went with that route, the packet. It was just easier to me to do it that way, but make sure that you are harboring relationships with your professors.
That is not correct.
So that when it comes time to get those rec letters, you have people to ask, because I know that's an issue for a lot of people, and you don't want to be stuck trying to find someone to write you a letter at the last minute. So this year I applied to 7 schools. I got 3 interviews. I was initially placed on 3 wait lists after those 3 interviews, and then I ultimately got accepted to 2 places. And my first interview was in October, and I got accepted to that school in December. My second interview was in November, and I got accepted to that school in February. And my third interview was in December, and I actually pulled myself off of their waiting list because I ultimately decided that wasn't the program for me. So who knows what would have happened with that one. But yeah. So if I had to give one piece of advice to anyone who's in undergrad or even in high school, I would say there is no such thing as a perfect applicant. You can try and emulate someone else as much as you want, but one person can do something and you can do the exact same thing and it won't work for you because that's not you. So just be sincere and be genuine in what you're doing. Be well-intentioned and just, do things in undergrad that challenge you. Step out of your comfort zone, maybe explore career fields that you didn't think you would want to do. Make sure you're affirmed in your decision because this is a long journey. And when you're working towards, the MCAT score that you want or the GPA that you want, just don't lose sight of what made you want to do this in the first place. Most people go into medicine because they care about people and they want to help people. So just don't get so caught up in the hullabaloo of I have to be perfect and I have to be the perfect applicant, because that doesn't exist. And another thing for my non-traditional student is I really thought it was the end of the world when I didn't get in last year. But now looking back on that, I really think that was a blessing in disguise. I matured a lot. I got to improve my application. I got to retake the MCAT. I got to take a break. So I wanted to say that having a gap year is not the end of the world. And I know a lot of people think that, because I know I felt that in undergrad. Don't feel that you have to apply your junior year or your senior, however it works. Don't feel that you have to apply your senior year of college to start that next year, because you always want to apply with the best application possible. And so if you feel that you have some weak spots in yours, I would say it's better to take the time to address that and apply later than to waste thousands of dollars, because it costs a lot of money to apply to school. Yeah, just take your time, and there's no rush, and med school will always be there next year or even the year after that. So thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. The sun is starting to set, and so that's why the lighting has changed 85 times during this video. But I think in my next video I want to talk more about interviews and secondary tips, maybe, possibly, or maybe I'll just do a vlog of my first day of school, because that is in 3 days. So definitely like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week, I guess.